I never planned on creating a scene at my brother Greg's wedding. But when my father called with his ultimatum, something inside me finally snapped. 23 years of being the family afterthought, watching Greg take credit for my accomplishments, and enduring their constant belittlement had worn me down. Now Dad was threatening to cut my tuition if I didn't attend this celebration of the golden child. They had no idea what I'd built while they were busy dismissing me. The company I secretly founded was about to change everything. I decided right then I would attend the wedding, but on my terms. Growing up as the second son of William Carter was like living in a perpetual shadow. My father built his construction business from nothing into a regional powerhouse, and he expected his firstborn to inherit his empire. Greg was 3 years older, naturally charismatic and athletic, everything Dad valued. I was quieter, more analytical, and preferred computers to football fields. In our household, that difference defined everything. "Thomas, why can't you be more like your brother?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. While Greg brought home trophies from sports, my academic achievements collected dust. The one time I won the state science competition, my father nodded briefly before asking Greg about his upcoming football game. Our mother Janet wasn't much better. She'd smile sympathetically when Dad favored Greg, but never intervened. "That's just how your father is," she'd say. "He doesn't mean anything by it." But he did, and we all knew it. What hurt most was how Greg weaponized the favoritism. In elementary school, I built a model solar system that teachers called exceptional. Greg helped me carry it into the science fair, then spent the day telling everyone he'd done most of the work because I wasn't good with my hands. My father believed him without question. This pattern repeated throughout our lives. In middle school, I coded a simple game that got attention from the local paper. Greg told everyone he had given me the idea and framework. In high school, I developed a scheduling algorithm that the school actually implemented. Somehow, Greg's college application mentioned he had created innovative scheduling solutions for his high school. The worst betrayal came during our junior year. I had been dating Sarah Jenkins for 6 months, my first real girlfriend. We connected over our love of science fiction and computer programming. She saw me for who I was, not as Greg Carter's little brother. Then Greg started spreading rumors that I was cheating on her with a girl from another school. Despite my denials, Sarah believed him. 2 weeks later, she was dating Greg. When I confronted him, he just laughed. "She wanted a real Carter man, not the knockoff version," he said. Despite everything, I excelled academically and earned a scholarship to the state's most prestigious engineering program. It wasn't full ride, however, and my father agreed to pay the remainder, his one acknowledgement that my book smarts might amount to something. "At least you'll have a degree to fall back on when your computer hobby doesn't work out," he said at my high school graduation dinner, right before giving Greg the keys to a new car for completing his business degree with average grades. What none of them knew, what I'd kept carefully hidden for almost 2 years, was that my computer hobby had already evolved into something extraordinary. During my sophomore year of college, I identified a critical gap in cybersecurity protocols for small to medium businesses. Working nights and weekends in my dorm room, I developed an elegant, affordable solution that could be implemented without specialized IT knowledge. With encouragement from Professor Davis, my computer science mentor, I quietly founded SecureScript. I rented a tiny office using my scholarship stipend and recruited 3 brilliant classmates who believed in the vision. We worked in secret, partly because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own merits, but mostly because I couldn't bear the thought of Greg somehow taking credit or my father dismissing it before it had a chance. By the end of that first year, we had 10 paying clients and were breaking even. By the middle of our second year, we had expanded to 300 clients and were turning a significant profit. I lived frugally, reinvested most of the money, and maintained the appearance of a struggling college student whenever I went home. No one in my family had any idea that the business now generated more monthly revenue than Greg's annual salary at the financial firm where he worked. This was my reality when the wedding invitation arrived. I was 22 years old, completing my final year of college, running a thriving tech company in secret, and still being treated like the family disappointment. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, an absurdly thick envelope with gold embossing and multiple inserts detailing various wedding events spanning an entire week. Greg was marrying Megan Taylor, daughter of Franklin Taylor, who owned one of the largest real estate development companies in 3 states. The wedding would be at the Lakeside Country Club, 800 guests, black tie, with a rehearsal dinner nearly as elaborate as most weddings. I stared at the invitation for a long time, memories of a lifetime of slights and humiliations washing over me. The previous Christmas, Greg had introduced me to his future in-laws as my little brother who's still figuring things out. At Thanksgiving, my father had spent dinner talking about how Greg was being groomed for management at his firm, while asking me exactly 0 questions about my studies or life. I dropped the invitation into my trash can and went back to debugging code. 3 days later, my phone rang with my father's name on the display. I almost didn't answer, but years of conditioning kicked in. "Hello? Thomas." My father's voice boomed through the speaker. "Your mother tells me you haven't RSVP'd to your brother's wedding yet." "I've been busy with finals," I lied. "But I'm not sure I can make it. I have a major project due that week." The silence that followed was icy. When he spoke again, his voice had that dangerous, quiet tone I'd learned to fear growing up. "Listen to me very carefully, Thomas. Your brother is marrying into the Taylor family. This wedding is the most important networking event of my career, and I will not have you embarrass this family by not attending." "Dad, No. I've indulged your academic pursuits. I've paid thousands in tuition for your computer courses. But if you can't show up for 1 week to support your brother, then perhaps I've been too generous." My stomach tightened. What does that mean exactly? "It means if you don't attend this wedding, you can find another way to pay for your final semester. I'm sure those computer skills you're so proud of can earn you some money flipping burgers." The threat hit me like a physical blow. While I could easily afford my tuition now, revealing that would mean explaining secure script, which I wasn't ready to do. But the principle of being blackmailed into attending made my blood boil. "Are you seriously threatening to cut off my tuition because I don't want to attend a wedding? I'm telling you that family obligations matter in this world, Thomas. It's time you learned that. RSVP, yes, by tomorrow, or find yourself another source of funding." He hung up before I could respond. I sat in stunned silence for several minutes before calling Jackson, my best friend since freshman year and now SecureScript's business development director. "He can't be serious," Jackson said after I explained the situation. "Oh, he's serious. This is classic William Carter," I said, pacing my apartment. "Everything is about appearances. God forbid the perfect family portrait has a missing member. So just tell him you don't need his money. The company made what, $600,000 last year? You could buy and sell his tuition payment 10 times over." I sighed, dropping onto my couch. "It's not that simple. Once I tell them about the company, everything changes. Greg will somehow try to take credit or get involved. Dad will have opinions and want to control things. And I can't deal with that right now. Not with the Sentinel acquisition talks heating up." Jackson was quiet for a moment. "What did Professor Davis tell you last semester about successful people?" I smiled slightly, recalling my mentor's words. That truly successful people aren't afraid to set boundaries. "Exactly. Maybe it's time to set some with your family." After we hung up, I checked my email and felt my mood darken further. A friend from high school had forwarded me a social media post where Greg had responded to someone asking if I would be at the wedding. His reply made my jaw clench. "We hope so, if he's in a good place mentally. Tommy's always been a bit unstable under pressure, so we're keeping things low-key around him." The sheer audacity of it painting me as mentally unstable while pressuring me to attend ignited something in me. I pulled up the RSVP website and clicked attending. But at that moment, I made a decision. I would go to this wedding, but not as the meek, overlooked younger brother they expected. It was time they learned exactly who I had become. To understand how I'd built a multi-million-dollar company while maintaining the facade of a normal college student requires going back to the beginning of my sophomore year. I was taking an advanced network security course with Professor Davis, a former Silicon Valley executive who had traded the startup world for academia. The class assignment was to identify vulnerabilities in existing security systems. While other students focused on complex enterprise solutions, I became fascinated by the complete lack of affordable, user-friendly security for small businesses. They're too small to afford enterprise solutions, but too valuable to be unprotected. I explained to Professor Davis during office hours. And the current middle market options require technical expertise most small business owners don't have. He leaned back in his chair, studying me with newfound interest. That sounds like more than an academic observation. I think I can build something better, I admitted. Something that installs in 20 minutes, runs autonomously, and costs 1/10 of current solutions. Then do it, he said simply. Don't just talk about it. For the next 3 months, I lived on energy drinks and determination. I built the initial prototype and tested it on the network of the campus coffee shop where I worked part-time. When it successfully blocked a genuine attack attempt without any intervention, I knew I had something special. Professor Davis introduced me to Amanda Troy, a former colleague who now ran a small angel investment fund. After grilling me for 2 hours on every aspect of my solution, she wrote me a check for $100,000 in seed funding. Don't waste my money, Thomas, she said with a wink. And don't let anyone tell you this isn't worth pursuing. With that investment, Secure Script was born. I convinced Jackson, who had a natural talent for sales, to join first. Then came Allison Chen from the marketing program, who could explain complex tech in ways that made sense to non-technical people. Mark Wilson, a programming prodigy I'd met in the computer lab at 3 in the morning, rounded out our founding team. We rented a tiny office above a sandwich shop near campus and worked around our class schedules. I coded until my eyes burned, then stumbled to morning classes, only to return and code more. We landed our first paying customer within 2 months, a local law firm tired of being held hostage by overpriced IT consultants. Word spread quickly. Our solution was elegant in its simplicity. Install once, constant protection, automatic updates, and half the price of competitors. By the end of that first year, we had expanded to regional businesses. 6 months later, we had clients in 12 states. All this time, I maintained my cover. I lived in the same modest apartment, drove the same used car, and went home for holidays where I endured questions about whether I'd ever find a real job after graduation. When my father asked about my social life, I'd vaguely mention being busy with studies, never revealing that I was actually in meetings with venture capitalists or onboarding new enterprise clients. The company grew faster than any of us anticipated. We moved to larger offices and hired 15 employees, mostly recent graduates who brought fresh perspectives. Our revenue exceeded $1 million, then $2 million. Industry publications began noticing this promising startup disrupting the small business security space. I declined all interview requests and kept my name off the company website. We listed Jackson as the public-facing CEO, while I operated as the unnamed Chief Technology Officer. It wasn't about ego. I genuinely wanted to succeed or fail based on the merits of our product, not have success handed to me because of my father's connections, or have Greg somehow worm his way into taking partial credit. The real turning point came when Sentinel Tech, one of the largest cybersecurity firms in the country, approached us about potential acquisition. Their initial email praised our innovative approach to democratizing security and suggested our technology could help them expand into markets they had previously ignored. Initial discussions valued SecureScript at $8 million, a figure that made my head spin the first time I heard it. But as negotiations progressed and they performed due diligence, they realized our client retention rate and growth metrics were far above industry standards. The valuation climbed to $12 million, then $15 million. By the time Greg's wedding invitation arrived, we were in final negotiations for a $20 million acquisition, with the deal potentially closing that same week. The irony wasn't lost on me. While my father was threatening to withdraw roughly $12,000 in tuition, I was negotiating a deal that would net me personally over $10 million as the majority shareholder. None of this would have been possible if my family had been involved. My father would have insisted on practical changes that would have undermined our core value proposition. Greg would have pushed for faster growth at the expense of quality. Their voices had dominated my life for so long that this one thing, this company I'd built with my own mind and hands, needed to exist outside their influence. But now, with the acquisition imminent and my father's ultimatum hanging over me, those two worlds were on a collision course. As I packed for the trip home, I wondered if I was finally ready for the impact. I arrived in my hometown 2 days before the wedding, driving my reliable but unimpressive 7-year-old sedan. The Carter family home, a sprawling colonial on 2 acres in the best neighborhood, looked exactly as it always had. Perfect lawn, perfect flowers, perfect facade. My mother greeted me with a hug that felt genuinely warm. "Thomas, we weren't sure you'd make it." The implied accusation hung between us. "Dad made it clear attendance wasn't optional," I replied, forcing a smile. "Well, we're just happy you're here. Greg and Megan are so excited about their special day." I nodded, not trusting myself to respond without sarcasm. As I carried my bag to my old bedroom, now converted to a generic guest room with no trace of my childhood, I reminded myself that I was only here for a few days. I could maintain the charade a little longer. The rehearsal dinner that evening was at Riverside Manor, the second most exclusive venue in town. I sat at the far end of the family table, nursing a glass of wine while various relatives inquired about my studies with that particular tone that suggested computer engineering was a curious but ultimately impractical choice. "So, you'll be done after this semester?" my Aunt Patricia asked. "And then what? Will you work for one of those big tech companies?" Before I could answer, Greg slid into the empty chair beside me, clapping a hand on my shoulder with performative brotherly affection. "Tommy here isn't much for corporate life," he announced loudly. "Too many rules, right, bro? He's always been the family rebel." He winked at our aunt as if they shared some understanding about my supposed difficulty with authority. I took another sip of wine, just focused on finishing my degree for now. "Well, not everyone can land a job at Preston Financial right out of college," Greg continued, naming the firm where he worked, conveniently owned by a friend of our father. "But I'm sure you'll find something entry-level to get your foot in the door." Our father appeared behind us, placing one hand on Greg's shoulder and ignoring me entirely. "The Taylors just arrived. Come, say hello." He pulled Greg away without acknowledging our conversation or my presence. As they walked away, I overheard Greg whisper to our father, "He's being civil so far. Maybe the threat worked." I gripped my wineglass tighter, reminding myself that in 48 hours I would be back to my real life. The next morning brought the golf outing for the groomsmen and male relatives. Despite not being included in the wedding party, Greg had selected his fraternity brothers. Instead, I was expected to attend. I rented clubs and spent 4 hours trailing behind my father, uncles, and Greg's friends, occasionally taking a shot but mostly being ignored. On the 12th hole, I found myself briefly alone with Greg while the others were at the green. "I appreciate you not making waves," he said, sounding almost sincere. "It means a lot to Megan that everything goes smoothly." "I'm just here because Dad threatened me," I replied honestly. Greg frowned. "Come on, Tommy. It's not like that. We're family. This is what families do, show up for each other." Interesting philosophy from someone who's never shown up for me. His expression hardened. "Still holding on to childhood grievances? This is why people worry about you, you know? Not everything is a competition," says the guy who's never lost one, I muttered. "Whatever, man. Just keep it together for 2 more days." He walked away to join the others, leaving me standing alone with my rented clubs. That evening was the welcome dinner for out-of-town guests at my parents' home. I was helping my mother set up the bar when I overheard Greg and Megan talking on the patio outside the open window. "Is that him? The brother?" Megan's voice carried clearly. "Yeah, that's Thomas. He seems so ordinary. From how your parents described him, I expected someone more difficult." Greg laughed. "He's keeping it together for now. But trust me, he's always been jealous. Dad basically has to bribe him to participate in family events. What's he going to do after college? Who knows? Probably some boring tech support job. He's always been better with computers than people." "Well, your dad was right to make him come. It would look weird if your only brother missed the wedding." And Franklin specifically asked if all family would be there for the photos. Their voices faded as they moved away from the window. I stood frozen, the ice tongs gripped tightly in my hand. It wasn't just Greg, they all talked about me this way when I wasn't around. As guests began arriving, I plastered on a polite smile and retreated to a corner with my drink. To my surprise, Lauren Davis approached me, my high school debate team partner who had gone on to law school. Thomas Carter, hiding at his own family function. "Some things never change," she said with a genuine smile that eased some of my tension. "Lauren, I didn't know you were back in town. Just for the wedding. My parents and the Taylors go way back. She studied me for a moment. You look good. Different somehow. I shrugged. Just older, I guess. No, it's more than that. You seem more confident, despite the family circus. She gestured subtly to where my father was loudly regaling guests with stories of Greg's childhood achievements. Let's just say I've found my place. It's just not here. We caught up for nearly an hour. The first genuine conversation I'd had since arriving. Lauren had always seen me clearly, never buying into the family narrative about me. As the evening wound down, I overheard my father talking to Franklin Taylor, Megan's father. Greg's proposal for expanding your commercial division is impressive, Franklin was saying. Using that automated assessment system could revolutionize how you evaluate properties. I froze. The automated assessment system sounded suspiciously familiar. It was nearly identical to a project I'd developed for a college assignment last year. I'd mentioned it briefly during Christmas break while working on it at the dining room table. Greg had asked several questions that seemed casual at the time. My suspicions were confirmed when Greg joined their conversation. The algorithm still needs some refinement, but the basic framework is solid. It should cut assessment time by 60%. He had stolen my concept and presented it as his own again, this time to his future father-in-law. And based on Franklin's impressed expression, it had worked. I slipped away before I said something I'd regret. Back in my childhood bedroom, I pulled out my laptop and logged into the secure script system to check on acquisition updates. There was an email from our lawyers indicating Sentinel wanted to accelerate the timeline. They were proposing to finalize the deal the morning of Greg's wedding. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony after all. I woke early the morning before the wedding and drove to a coffee shop 3 towns over, paranoid about running into wedding guests. I needed privacy for the video call with Sentinel's executives and our lawyers. Thomas, we've reviewed the final terms, said Heather Winters, our lead counsel. Sentinel has agreed to all our key points, including the $20 million valuation and the leadership retention plan. On screen, James Perkins, Sentinel's acquisition director, nodded. We're extremely impressed with what you've built, Thomas. Your technology fills a critical gap in our portfolio, and we believe your team's innovation will be valuable beyond just this product line. We spent the next hour reviewing details: the cash payment structure, the transition plan, the roles our team would take within Sentinel. Throughout the discussion, I couldn't help marveling at the contrast between this world where my ideas were valued and my leadership respected and the family dynamic I'd just left at home. We'd like to announce the acquisition next week, James continued. Our PR team has drafted a release highlighting SecureScript's growth story and your role as founder. The thought of my family learning about my success from a press release was momentarily tempting but ultimately unsatisfying. Let's hold the announcement until after the weekend, I suggested. I have some personal matters to address first. After the call ended, Jackson messaged me. Congratulations, secret millionaire. How does it feel? Surreal, I typed back. Everyone here still thinks I'm barely scraping by. When are you going to tell them? I stared at the screen for a long moment. Tomorrow. At the wedding. Dramatic. I approve. I spent the afternoon finalizing details with our lawyers. The paperwork would be ready for signatures by 8 o'clock the next morning, 4 hours before Greg's ceremony. Once executed, I would officially be a millionaire many times over, no longer dependent on anyone's approval or financial support. When I returned to my parents' house, preparations for the rehearsal dinner were underway. I changed into my suit and rode silently with my parents to the country club, my mind occupied with acquisition details rather than wedding logistics. During dinner, I excused myself to take a call from Amanda Troy, our initial investor. You've done it, Thomas, she said, her voice warm with pride. From prototype to $20 million acquisition in under 3 years. That's exceptional by any standard. I couldn't have done it without your belief in me. I replied honestly. Nonsense. You would have found a way. That's who you are. She paused. Have you told your family yet? No. They still think I'm struggling through college. May I ask why? Most people would be shouting this kind of success from the rooftops. I leaned against the wall in the quiet hallway, considering her question. They've spent my whole life telling me who I am, and what I'm capable of. And they've always been wrong. Part of me wanted to succeed or fail without their voices in my head. And now I'm ready for them to see me clearly. I just needed to be sure of myself first. After we hung up, I nearly bumped into my grandmother Eleanor as I turned to rejoin the dinner. "There you are," she said, taking my arm. "I've hardly had a chance to talk to you since you arrived." Grandmother Eleanor had always been different from the rest of the family. A retired literature professor, she valued intellect and creativity in ways my father never had. She was the one who had given me my first programming book, who had attended my science competitions when my parents were busy with Greg's sports games. We found a quiet table away from the main party. "You seem troubled, Thomas," she observed. "More than usual when you're home." There was something about her steady gaze that always made it impossible to dissemble. "I've built something, Grandma. Something important. And no one here knows or would understand if they did." She patted my hand. "I've always known you would find your path. You have a mind that sees possibilities others miss." "Greg stole one of my ideas again," I admitted. "He's using it to impress Megan's father." Her expression hardened slightly. "The pattern continues. Then, tomorrow will be different," I said, surprising myself with the certainty in my voice. "I'm not the same person they think I am." She studied me for a long moment. "No, you're not. You never were." She squeezed my hand. "Whatever you're planning, remember that true victory isn't about humiliation. It's about finally being seen." As we rejoined the party, I noticed my father deep in conversation with Greg and Franklin Taylor. They were discussing Greg's future role in the Taylor companies, with my father proudly detailing how he had already arranged for Greg to take over a division of the family construction business within 2 years. "The automated assessment system Greg developed is just the beginning," my father boasted. "He has a natural business instinct that can't be taught." The stolen idea was becoming the foundation for Greg's entire career trajectory. Something cold settled in my stomach as I realized how far the deception went. This wasn't just taking credit for my work. This was building his future on it. Back in my childhood bedroom that night, I laid out my suit for the wedding and placed the acquisition paperwork in a leather portfolio. For years, I had hidden my light, allowing their narratives about me to stand unchallenged. Tomorrow would change everything, not out of revenge, but because it was finally time to be fully seen. I woke before dawn on Greg's wedding day, my mind too active for sleep. By 6:30, I was dressed in casual clothes and driving to a nearby hotel where I had arranged to meet our lawyers for the signing. Jackson had flown in to witness the moment, and he greeted me in the hotel lobby with an enthusiastic hug. "Today's the day, man. Secret millionaire no more." The next 90 minutes passed in a blur of signatures and official documents. Representatives from Sentinel joined by video conference, offering congratulations as we completed each step. By 8:15, it was official. SecureScript was now a division of Sentinel Technologies, and I was the recipient of a wire transfer that had added 8 figures to my net worth. "Mr. Carter," said James Perkins from the screen, "on behalf of Sentinel, we couldn't be more excited about this partnership. Your innovation will help protect thousands of businesses." After the lawyers departed, Jackson and I sat in the hotel restaurant, processing what had just happened. "So what's the plan exactly?" Jackson asked. "You're going to just drop this bomb at your brother's wedding?" I shook my head. "Not during the ceremony or anything, but at the reception, when Greg inevitably makes some condescending comment or my father pressures me to toast the golden child. Yes, I'm done hiding." Jackson studied me over his coffee cup. "This isn't just about the money, is it?" "No," I admitted. "It's about finally being seen clearly, about standing in my truth after a lifetime of being miscast in their narrative." "Just remember," Jackson said, "whatever happens today, you've already won. This," he tapped the acquisition documents, "is the proof." I returned home to change into my wedding suit, a custom-tailored charcoal gray that I'd purchased months earlier but kept hidden in my apartment. It fit perfectly, a physical representation of how I had grown into myself away from my family's limiting perceptions. The ceremony was as lavish as expected. 800 guests filled the country club's grand hall, which had been transformed with thousands of flowers and crystal decorations. I sat with my parents in the front row, watching Greg beam as Megan walked down the aisle. During the vows, I found myself genuinely moved. Whatever my issues with Greg, this moment wasn't about our history. I silently wished them happiness, even as I prepared to change the dynamic between us forever. The reception began with cocktails and passed hors d'oeuvres. I mingled politely, answering the same questions about college and future plans with practiced vagueness. Grandmother Eleanor found me by the bar and gave me a knowing look. "You seem different today," she observed. "More present." I smiled. "I am. Whatever happens, know that I see you," she said, patting my cheek before moving to greet other guests. The moment of truth came after dinner, when Greg rose to make his speech. He thanked everyone for coming, praised Megan's beauty and intelligence, and then turned to our parents. "Dad, Mom, everything I am today is because of your guidance and support. Dad, you showed me what it means to be a man of vision and determination. You built your business from nothing and taught me that success comes to those who seize opportunities." My father beamed with pride as Greg continued. "I promise to make you proud as I build my own legacy," combining the Carter drive with the Taylor vision. There was enthusiastic applause. Then Greg looked directly at me for the first time that day. "And Tommy, thanks for taking a break from your studies to be here. I know how challenging social situations can be for you sometimes." The condescension was subtle enough that most guests wouldn't notice. But the implication was clear. Poor Thomas, the awkward younger brother who struggled with normal human interactions. As the applause died down, my father leaned over. "You should say something too." "I wasn't planning to," I replied quietly. "It's your brother's wedding," he hissed. "Don't make this another example of you refusing to participate in family moments." The familiar guilt trip might have worked 6 months earlier, but not today. I stood slowly and approached the microphone. Greg looked surprised, then slightly concerned. "For those who don't know me, I'm Thomas, Greg's younger brother." I paused, looking out at the sea of faces. We've had an interesting relationship over the years. I saw my mother tense. My father's expression darkened with warning. Growing up as the second Carter son meant learning some valuable lessons early. I learned that perception often matters more than reality. I learned that taking credit can sometimes be more rewarded than doing the work. I looked directly at Greg, whose smile had frozen in place. But the most important lesson I learned was that validation from others is a poor substitute for believing in yourself. I turned slightly to address Franklin Taylor. "Sir, the automated assessment system that Greg presented to you was actually my college project from last year, just as the solar system model in elementary school was mine, and the scheduling algorithm in high school was mine." A murmur ran through the crowd. Greg stepped forward as if to take the microphone, but I continued. "This pattern has defined our relationship since childhood. But today isn't about settling old scores. It's about truth. And the truth is, while my family has been dismissing me as the struggling college student with questionable prospects, I've been building something significant." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the press release draft that would soon announce the acquisition. "This morning, I finalized the sale of SecureScript, the cybersecurity company I founded 3 years ago, to Sentinel Technologies for $20 million. The room went completely silent. My father's face drained of color. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Greg stared in disbelief. "So, Dad, when you threatened to cut my tuition if I didn't attend this wedding, you should know I could have paid the full amount from my checking account. In fact, as of this morning, my annual income exceeds what Greg and you make combined." I took a deep breath, feeling a lifetime of suppressed truth finally breaking free. I kept my success private because I wanted to succeed or fail on my own terms, without the family dynamics that have always complicated things between us. I built something valuable by believing in myself when no one in this family except Grandma Eleanor did. I looked at Greg. "I wish you and Megan every happiness. Truly. And I hope someday we can build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than competition." I handed the microphone to the stunned wedding planner and returned to my seat. The silence that followed was broken by my grandmother slowly standing and beginning to applaud. One by one, others joined in tentatively at first, then with genuine appreciation for the raw honesty they had just witnessed. My father sat rigidly, staring straight ahead. My mother dabbed at tears. Greg remained frozen next to Megan, whose expression had shifted from shock to calculation as she processed the implications of having a multimillionaire brother-in-law. The band quickly began playing, drawing attention away from the family drama and back to the celebration. But in that moment, something fundamental had shifted. For the first time in my life, I had spoken my truth to my family, and nothing had collapsed. The world had not ended. Instead, I felt lighter than I had in years. The immediate aftermath of my revelation was predictably chaotic. As the band played and guests returned to dancing, my family huddled in a side room off the main hall. My father paced back and forth, his face flushed with a mixture of anger and confusion. "You humiliated your brother at his wedding," he began, his voice low and controlled. "After everything we've done for you, William." My mother interjected, touching his arm. "Did you hear what Thomas said? He sold his company for $20 million. I heard him make claims that conveniently can't be verified right now." My father shot back. I silently withdrew the acquisition documents from my inner pocket and placed them on the table. "Everything I said is documented here. The wire transfer cleared this morning." Greg, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. "You've been planning this. You waited until my wedding day to drop this bomb." "No," I said evenly. "The timing of the acquisition was coincidental, but I did decide it was finally time to stop hiding my success from my family." I looked directly at him. "Just like it was time to acknowledge that you've been taking credit for my work since we were children." Greg opened his mouth to deny it, but our mother surprised us all by speaking first. "He's right, Greg." Her voice was quiet but clear. "I've seen it happening for years and never said anything. That science fair project, the scheduling system for the school, those were Thomas's work." My father stared at her in disbelief. "Janet, we've always favored Greg," she continued, tears forming in her eyes. "We told ourselves it was because Thomas was stronger, more independent. But that wasn't fair or true." Greg's face flushed. "So now I'm the villain? On my wedding day?" "No one is calling you a villain," I said. "I'm just done pretending. Done hiding my success to make others comfortable. Done accepting the family narrative about who I am." My father picked up the acquisition documents, scanning them with the practiced eye of a businessman. I could see the moment he registered the reality of what I had accomplished. The numbers were too specific, the legal language too precise to be fabricated. $20 million, he muttered, almost to himself. "You built a $20 million company while in college." "Yes," I said simply. "That's what I've been trying to tell you for years, that my computer hobby wasn't just a phase or a distraction." We were interrupted by a gentle knock. Grandmother Eleanor entered, her eyes taking in the tense family tableau. "The photographer is looking for all of you," she announced. "Megan is quite distressed by your absence." The mention of his bride snapped Greg back to the present moment. "We need to get back," he said. "We can deal with this later." As Greg and our parents moved toward the door, Eleanor held me back with a gentle hand on my arm. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "Not for the money, though, that's certainly impressive, but for finally standing in your truth." "Thank you for always seeing me," I replied, hugging her tightly. "They'll come around," she assured me. "Today was a shock, but they're still your family." The remainder of the reception passed in a blur of forced smiles and awkward small talk. Guests who had witnessed my speech gave me curious looks but respectfully avoided direct questions. Megan's father, Franklin Taylor, cornered me briefly by the dessert table. "That automated assessment system," he said without preamble. "Was it really your creation?" "Yes," I replied. "It was a project for my advanced algorithms course." He nodded thoughtfully. "I'd like to hear more about it sometime. From the actual creator." "I'd be happy to discuss it," I said. "After the honeymoon, perhaps." The acknowledgement, small as it was, felt significant. 3 days after the wedding, I received a text from my mother asking me to come to the house. I arrived to find both my parents sitting tensely in the living room. "We've been doing some research," my father began without greeting, "about Secure Script and the acquisition." "It's all public information now," I said, taking a seat across from them. "Why didn't you tell us?" my mother asked, hurt evident in her voice. "All this time, you let us believe you were just getting by." I considered my words carefully. Would you have believed me if I had told you? Or would you have dismissed it as another one of Thomas's impractical schemes? My father flinched slightly. We've always supported your education. Financial support isn't the same as believing in someone, I replied. Every achievement I ever had was minimized or attributed to someone else. After a while, I stopped sharing them altogether. The painful truth hung in the air between us. My father, a man who had built his identity around being the family success story, struggled visibly with this shift in dynamic. I never meant to, he began, then stopped, uncharacteristically at a loss for words. I know, I said, softening slightly. You wanted what you thought was best for me, but you never asked what I wanted or recognized what I was actually good at. And Greg? My mother asked hesitantly. That's between Greg and me, I replied. But I'm not going to pretend anymore that the dynamic between us was healthy or fair. In the weeks that followed, a tentative new family reality began to take shape. Greg and Megan returned from their honeymoon to find that the family power structure had fundamentally shifted. Greg called me, our first one-on-one conversation in years that wasn't laced with condescension. You could have told me, he said immediately. Would you have believed me? Or would you have found a way to make it about you, like everything else? His silence was telling. I don't want to be enemies, Greg, I continued, but I need you to acknowledge the pattern that's defined our relationship. After a long pause, he sighed. I always felt like I had to live up to Dad's expectations. You were the smart one, so I had to be something else, taking credit for your ideas. It started small, and then became a habit. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was more self-awareness than I'd ever heard from him. We have a chance to start over, I offered. As equals. 3 months after the wedding, I used part of my newfound wealth to establish a scholarship fund for innovative engineering students from disadvantaged backgrounds. The first recipient was a brilliant young woman whose algorithmic approach to water purification showed remarkable promise. At the scholarship announcement event, I was surprised to see my father in the audience. He approached me afterward, his expression more open than I could remember seeing it in years. This is good work, he said, gesturing to the scholarship materials. Supporting young innovators. Someone did the same for me once, I replied, thinking of Professor Davis and Amanda Troy. It's important to pay it forward. He nodded, then cleared his throat. I've been thinking about what you said, about never asking what you wanted, or seeing what you were good at. He met my eyes directly. I was wrong about that, about a lot of things. Coming from my father, this admission was monumental. I'd like to understand better what you built, he continued. Not to take over or interfere, but just to know you better. It was a small olive branch, but a significant one. I'd like that, I replied. Our relationship remained a work in progress. Old patterns didn't disappear overnight, and there were still awkward moments and misunderstandings. But slowly, a new foundation was being built, one based on who we actually were, rather than who we had been expected to be. My role at Sentinel allowed me to continue innovating while mentoring young engineers. I found particular satisfaction in identifying talented individuals who, like me, might have been overlooked in traditional settings. At a technology conference 6 months after the acquisition, I was approached by a nervous young developer who had created a promising application. No one at my company takes me seriously, he confided. They think because I'm quiet that I don't have good ideas. I smiled, recognizing my younger self in his hesitation. Let me tell you a story about perception versus reality, I began, and about the power of believing in yourself when others don't. The greatest lesson I had learned through everything was that true success wasn't measured by dollar signs or acquisitions. It was about living authentically, creating value, and finding the courage to be seen for who you really are, not who others expect you to be. Have you ever felt overlooked or underestimated by your family or others close to you? How did you handle it? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for more authentic life stories, and share it with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't defined by others' perceptions. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey, and remember, sometimes the greatest success is finally being seen for who you truly are.